Hello and welcome to this seventh recording in the Azure Demo Series. So in this demo, I'll focus on Azure Storage and mainly talking about the blob and the file storage types. And then I'll show the implementation of Azure Backup and Recovery Services. So in essence, and there will be various aspects of implementing Azure Storage Services that we'll demonstrate in this particular recording. So we'll cover things like creating an Azure Storage account using different types of Azure Storage, uploading content to an Azure blob using tools like AzCopy, and also I would like to mention that most likely this will be divided to 2 or 3 separate videos to avoid it going for too long. Um, if this is your very first video that you're working in this whole Azure demo series, I strongly encourage you to go back and at least watch the very first recording in this series where we cover the setting up of the lab environment, because you won't be able to follow along if you don't have the lab environment set up, if you don't know how to set that up. Also, some of the things that I'll be doing, like running a bunch of scripts, may not make sense to you, or when we start bringing up the 20533 lab content from GitHub, that may not make sense to you if you've not seen the previous recordings. So that being said, let's get into this. So here's the instructions that I'll be following for this particular lab. So if you go to the same page that we go to, I'll put this in the description below. If you go under instructions, what you want is lab 06 answer key, aka there. And then if you click on that, so that's what we'll be following here today. And also I'll bring up Paint where I have an outline of what we'll cover today. So we'll start by setting up our lab environment by running the PowerShell scripts that we run to set up the environment. And then we'll demonstrate creating and configuring an Azure Storage account, and then using Azure File Storage. And finally, we'll end with protecting data with Azure Backup. So there we'll cover the creation of an Azure Recovery Services Vault. But we'll get through all this in details when we get to the different sections. So very first thing that we need to do is we need to prepare our lab environment here. So to do that, ensure that you're doing this from within the lab machine that we've set up, which is the MIACL1 machine. If you've called yours by a different name, that's absolutely fine. Just ensure that you're doing it from within the virtual machine that was set up, or the machine, it could be virtual or physical, that we set up in the very first recording, and that already has the tools installed. Okay, let's get to set up the environment. So what I'll do is I'll bring up PowerShell, and first thing, as always, we'll set the execution policy to unrestricted. I'll answer A for yes to all. And the next thing I'll do is I'll import the HAD 20533 environment module. If you run this and you get a bunch of what we call in IT the wall of blood, and you get it all red, that's to show you that you've missed something. So what you need to do is go back to the first recording and ensure that you've imported or you've copied all the modules that we talked about there. So how for one once, and then I'll go ahead and add the environment 20533D environment. The command is going to ask for which lab I want to set up. Ensure that you select 6 or you type in 6. So even though this is the 7th recording, we're actually on the 6th lab. So the reason for that was the first recording was dedicated to setting up the environment. So that's why. So if I type enter to that, ensure that it says lab 6 planning and implementing Azure Storage. Ensure that it says that. So once it says that, says do you want to proceed? I type Y, I press enter, then it's going to start the process of setting up the environment. It's going to prompt me very soon to put in my credentials. Yeah, there we go. I have to put in the credentials to sign into my Azure account. In this case, that's the okay, your day pass 08 at Outlook, and put in the password there. So the text my subscription, it's asking because it's going to try to run a bunch of scripts in the backend. I'll go ahead and type for that. Go ahead and type how for the other one for the script to select the location. And here you have to select the location where it's going to do the deployment. For me, I'll select number 5 and West Europe because that's closest to me or to where I am. So I'll type in 5 and press enter. And then it's going to try to set up the environment. I'll type R and then it's going to begin. So this whole process, it's going to take roughly about 7 to 8 minutes to complete. One of the things that it's going to do is it's going to prompt us and say we should enter, actually, which it's doing now, to enter a VM size. So by the way, I'll explain a bit what's actually doing to you. First of all, I'll enter standard D2 V2. So one of the reasons why I'm not using the D2 here is because I'm using an Azure Pass subscription, which in West Europe does not allow me to deploy that particular machine size. So ensure that you put in a machine size that you're allowed to deploy in whatever location or region that you selected earlier. So for me, I'll leave that standard D2 V2, and then it's going to begin the process. As mentioned, I expect this to take between 7 to 8 minutes to complete. What I'll do is I'll just talk quickly to what it's going to be doing in the backend, and then I'll pause the recording. So what will be happening in the backend while we're running that is that it's actually going to create a new resource group called 20533D0601 in the Azure subscription that it's selected when we run the script. If you had multiple subscriptions, it's going to prompt you to select the subscription that you want to use. And within that resource group is going to create a virtual network that has an address space of 10.0/16. And then it's going to create a subnet under the virtual network that has the space of outside the range of 10.0/24. 10.0.0/24. And then it's going to create a virtual machine called 20533D 0601 VM with that username and password. So it's going to set that up. And essentially, if I bring up my diagram here quickly, what it's going to do is it's going to set up this virtual machine that we have over here. That's what it's going to set up. So that being said, now I'll pause the recording, and then once it completes, I'll resume recording, and then we can carry on. Hello and welcome back. So that completed now. So that took roughly around 8 minutes to complete. So if we do a quick review of what the preparation script did, if I go under resource groups, you see this new resource group there. If you go under that resource group, you see that there's a new virtual network and there's a new virtual machine that it created. So we will be using this virtual machine in the upcoming exercises. So let's move on to exercise number 1 then, which is where in task number 1, we're going to create a storage account. So the goal of this particular task is to create a new storage account in Azure, and then we're going to create a blob container within that, and we're going to be doing that in a new resource group. So let's just go ahead and get on with that. So that's a really straightforward thing to do. What I need to do is if I come under create a resource, I'll click on storage. And then on the storage blade, I'll select storage account, blob file, table queue. And then what it's going to do is it's going to ask us to put in a unique name. The name that we'll put in has to be unique in this DNS namespace of .core.windows.net. So if I put in that name, AZ Labstore or Azure Labstore 321, okay, that's acceptable. I'll leave that set to general purpose version 1 because that's what the lab manual said. Again, one of the things that I think I need to cover here, because sometimes people can watch these videos and go, this is a demo video. I do a bunch of different types of videos. So I will have other videos. So very soon I'll be coming out with an Azure deep dive series where I'll be going in depth. So there are different kinds of videos and they're for different purposes. This demo series, it's mainly to show you how to implement. We're not going in depth and explaining what all these different kinds mean. That's for a different type of video. We cannot put do everything within a single video. So let me just show that out there and explain the reason why I'm just going, let's go next, because it's a demo video strictly showing how to implement. When we get to how to understand or understanding like what all this means, that's a different set of video. Watch out for the or look out for the Azure deep dive series that I'll be doing starting very soon. Okay, so on the replication, I'll change this to locally redundant storage. On the location, what I want to do is I want to select the same location I selected when I deployed my environment, which was West Europe. So if I change that to West Europe, leave that as storage general purpose version 1, leave secure transfer to disabled, leave performance to standard also. So the resource group, select create new, and then put in this the name that we have in the lab manual, which is that. So just 02. And we'll leave the virtual network section disabled. And then I'll just go ahead and click on create. And that should not take very long to create. Essentially, we just created a new um, Azure Storage account once that completes. So if you want to monitor the deployment, you can click on deployment in progress here, and it's going to take you to where the deployment is going on. And you can refresh and see what's going on. It's going to show you the duration, and you can see what's actually doing now. It's accepted the operation. You can click on operation details to look in more details if you want to. So for now, I think this should not take long. So I don't want to pause and then come back just immediately. Let's just refresh it a bit more. Okay, so while it's doing that, the next thing that we're going to do, if I bring up this one, is we're going to create a container within the blob. So we just create a new storage account that can handle 4 different storage types. So blob, tables, queues, and files. So in this case, this is finished deploying. If I click on this to go to the storage account. So what I want is I want to focus on just the blobs, and I want to create a container under the blob service for that storage account. So I don't have any container created. I can click on plus container to create a new container, and I'll call it the name that we have in the lab manual, which is assets-images. And for the public access level, I'll leave that to private, no anonymous access, essentially ensuring that no one can just use the URL from the internet anonymously to try to access the content of this container, of this blob service. So I'll go ahead and click OK to that. So that shouldn't be long. That's done almost immediately. So that's created now. So that's access out task number 1. Let's move ahead to task number 2, which is what we'll do is the virtual machine that was created when we prepared the lab environment. We're going to connect to that virtual machine. And then what we'll do is we're going to download. Are we going to connect to that virtual machine now? Let me see. No, forget that. So we're not connecting to that virtual machine yet. We'll connect to it in exercise 2. So in exercise 1, we're still doing everything from the lab machine, which is MIACL1 or whatever name you called yours. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to download and install a tool called AzCopy on MIACL1 or our lab machine. And then we're going to use that tool to upload some content to the Azure blob storage that we just created, to the container that we just created. So let's go ahead and do that now. So the very first thing is we get the URL. Let's go to the lab machine. Let's open the URL where we have the Azure AzCopy tool. So we have it here. We can go ahead and download the latest version of AzCopy, and it's downloaded the MSI file there. You can click on that to begin to run it. In my own case, I think I already have it installed, but let's go next. You can see my own case, because I already have it installed, it's giving me the option to repair or remove it. In your own case, just follow the instructions by just clicking next to just install it. And just leave the defaults and just install it. So once you have AzCopy installed, if you go on the C drive and on the program files x86, and you have Microsoft SDKs there, and you have Azure, and under there you have AzCopy there. So this is where the application is essentially. So what we'll do next is let's bring up PowerShell ISC. So I'll right click PowerShell here and click Run ISC as administrator. And let's just go ahead and close that. Let's start something new. So what I'll do is let's make this a bit larger to see. Okay, so very first thing that we'll do is we'll copy this command from the lab manual and I'll paste it in here. So set location to the location where AzCopy is. So if I highlight on that and then click on that to run it, so you can notice that the path has now changed to that location. By the way, we don't need this, so I can close that. So the next thing, just to show you some of the options that we have when it comes to AzCopy, is I'll just run this. So run AzCopy /? And if I press enter to that, it's going to show us some of the options and show us some examples of using this AzCopy tool. So this is essentially like the help file for this tool. So I encourage you to go through it just to get familiar with what the tool does and how to use its usage. Okay, so now that we've done that, I'll just put that here. The next thing that we'll do is we'll use AzCopy to upload some content to Azure blob storage to the container. So what I need to do is we have this line of script from the lab manual. I need to replace the storage account name with the account name of my storage account that I created earlier, and then the access key with the access key for my storage account. So let's go ahead and do that. So if I go back to the Azure portal, and if I just go under my storage account, and by the way, if you're not there, you can click storage account and then click on the storage account that you created earlier there, and then click on the access keys. So under access keys, what you want to do is you want to copy the storage account name, and then if I go back here, I want to go and place the storage or paste the storage account name to replace that. So that's my storage account name .blob.core.windows.net /asset images, which is the container that we created earlier. Then we need the access key also. So the access keys, we get two keys. So one of the reasons for that is so that we can rotate easily if we wanted to rotate the keys. Rotate the second one, modify, and then rotate the first one. So I'll just copy the access key, key 1, and then go back to PowerShell ISC and then replace access key here with the access key. So what are we trying to do with this is if I go under this location, lab files on the lab machine, lab files, lab 06, starter asset images. You see this bunch of PNG image files that are in this location. I want to upload the content of this folder to my container in Azure. So in the Azure Storage account. So what I'll do is I'll highlight that and I'll go ahead and click on run. And that's done. That's like almost instantly it's done. Look at the elapsed time that it took. So what will now happen if I go back to my Azure Storage account and if I go under containers there, and then I have asset images there, if I click on that, you'll notice that the content there where or that are on the that are in this folder now exists here. So that's us finishing the very first exercise. So what I'll do is I'll probably just stop this recording because I think this has gone long enough. So in the very next recording, which will be a continuation of this one, so that'll be recording 7B, I'll focus on exercise 2 where we do some demos on Azure file storage. So using SMB shares from within Azure, and then we'll round it off with Azure backup. So I'll see you in the next recording. Bye for now.